The 16-year-old guy was chased by the entire state police. This is his incredible story. Nowadays, a person who has committed a crime is considered to be a criminal, and that is exactly what it is. However, each of us immediately imagines a highwayman or a Prohibition-era gangster who robs everyone indiscriminately, leaving nothing behind. But in our today's story, we will talk about a criminal with an angelic appearance and a talent managed to rob banks easily. And best of all, without the use of any violence at all. At one time, this kid was one of the most wanted criminals in the United States and far beyond. During his career, the young man changed 5 professions and robbed banks to the tune of more than $5 million. I'm sure that many people will be surprised to learn that his weapons were just a pen, scissors, eraser, and glue. Some might say that's impossible, but nothing in the world is impossible. And the story of Frank Abagnale Jr. is direct proof of that. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. Back in 1948, when a boy named Frank was born in a family of a businessman and a housewife. The family at the time lived in Bronxville, near New York, and besides the family had 3 other children, which however did not prevent them from divorcing when Frank was 16 years old. It turned out that the court left the boy with his father, but his father had no particular desire and time to deal with his son. As the hero of our story later admitted, it was his parents' divorce that drove him to crime. The 16-year-old Frank's first scams involved operating a petrol station. With the help of a credit card, it was his father who was the first victim of young Frank's fraudulent activities. The boy who was finishing school began to need more money to get in touch with the girls. After his father bought him a car, Frank took his credit card to go to the petrol station. Later, he made arrangements with petrol station and service station staff to charge the card for items he didn't actually buy. The money for the bogus purchases was simply shared between Frank and the gas station workers. That's how the budding con man bought 22 batteries, a dozen sets of tires, and a huge amount of gasoline in a short period of time. Interestingly, the father only found out about the fraud when a bank representative came to him in person to tell him about the $3,400 debt he had accumulated. The check sent by postal service did not reach him as the adventurous son simply destroyed it. Of course, he didn't make much money, but it did play its role anyway. The passion for easy money was so strong that Frank did not want to do anything else. After his father had some educational talks with him, Frank calmed down, but not for long, and soon the boy had the idea of forging a check for his bank account. On the check, he wrote an amount that far exceeded the amount available in the account. And interestingly enough, he defrauded several banks in this way. This was his first real crime and was the starting point of the kid's criminal career. Even then, he was able to get away with it, thanks to skills he had inherited from his father, including an interest in politics and the ability to communicate with people of all social classes. But that was only the beginning. After the check scam, Frank learned how to drop forged deposit slips in bank databases. These were used to transfer money from bona fide customers, not to the bank account, but to Frank's account. The banks did eventually figure out where their money was going, but by then Frank had already emptied his accounts, receiving more than $50,000 and even changed his identity. It is not to say that the boy was in dire need of money. He grew up in a wealthy family. He was only interested in forging checks for sport. At least that is what he later said. But even this, of course, was not enough for the young man. Never stopping at one thing in particular, he painstakingly built up his skills, and after a while he even became good at forging all sorts of documents. In the 1960s, all he needed was a typewriter, pencil, pen, eraser, and a glue, but that wasn't what mattered. He had a sharp mind, a good memory, an eye for detail, and the ability to charm people. Best of all, Frank was only 16 at the time. His first successes inspired him and turned his head. It was these that helped him to switch to an adventurous lifestyle, allowing him to later become the most virtuoso con man in his underage years. The young con man longed to see the world, and his occupation required him to relocate frequently. Of course, he did not want to pay for the flight, so he hatched another plan. Faking a pilot's ID, our guy instantly became a pilot of the largest U.S. airline, Pan American. It's hard to believe now, but for the full 2 years, the guy fooled not only the company management, but also the pilots themselves, with whom he had to operate flights to the most diverse places in the world. By the way, this was Frank's favorite role because it allowed him not only to avoid paying for flights, but also for hotel accommodation. Frank introduced himself as young pilot to the head of Pan American Supplies and told him the tearful story about the stolen uniform. Of course, the kind gentleman was sympathetic and gave the swindler a new set of pilot's clothes, supposedly to help him avoid being fired. To delve into the lives of pilots and airline operations, Frank listened to the conversations of real staff at the bars and talked to the spokesmen under the guise of a journalist. As a result, for several years, Frank was listed as an employee of a major airline with false papers. During that time, he flew more than 1 million miles and visited nearly 36 countries. Naturally, Frank had no plans to sit behind the steering wheel and was often a third crew member or had a few drinks before a flight, after which he was not allowed to get to the wheel. But in addition to the posh lifestyle of a pilot, Frank started making airline checks under artisanal conditions, after which he posed as a pilot and cashed them in all the banks of the world. Even then, Frank had no equal in the art of counterfeiting securities and documents. He was also aware that he could be found out, so he never stayed in one place for long. He constantly changed identities, places of residence, and even professions. According to the FBI report, Frank had been a film producer, a U.S. history professor in France, a professor at Columbia University, a pediatrician, and even an agent for a classified division of the CIA. And everywhere he did a great job. While working at Pan American, Frank was Robert Blake. He told the stewardess that he had a Harvard law degree. The girl had a lawyer friend and he invited Frank to take the exam. After that, Frank really had to forge his own diploma and prepare for the exams. He did 2 months of self-study and twice tried unsuccessfully to get into the bar. Still, the effort did not go in vain. Frank managed to get a job as an assistant attorney general in Louisiana. After 8 months, however, he had to leave. It wasn't that the self-styled lawyer wasn't up to the job, it was just that there was a real Harvard graduate working for the same prosecutor, and Frank was afraid of being exposed. As for money, he still received it from banks by forged checks. Credit institutions from various countries sponsored him for as much as $5 million, and the young man was not shy about spending a lot and living nicely. He dined in expensive restaurants and wooed girls with valuable gifts, and being at heart a boy, he liked to imitate James Bond, dressing up in expensive suits and buying luxury cars. But sooner or later, all secrets came out, and so it was with the hero of our video. The guy guessed that the FBI had been on his trail for months. If he hadn't decided to move to France, he would probably have avoided arrest. By an absurd coincidence, Frank was recognized by a girl from Air France who had come to visit relatives in a small town in France where Frank was laid up at the time. He was arrested in 1969 when he had just turned 21. Even experienced detectives were shocked to learn that the scammer had managed to do all of the above in just 5 years. But even after the guy was behind bars, his life did not become any less interesting. The fact that 12 different countries have requested his extradition, in which he managed to do his dirty business. By that time, the leaked information in the media made so much noise that at one time he even became the most popular man in the United States. After serving exactly 1 year in prisons in France and Sweden, Frank was eventually deported to the United States, where FBI agents and bailiffs eagerly awaited his arrival. In 1971, a court in Virginia sentenced Frank to 12 years in prison, but such a valuable asset with his skills and intelligence interested the intelligence services, which he fooled for a long time. They decided to use his skills to their advantage. After only 4 years in prison, the FBI offered the guy a reduced sentence in exchange for helping catch other bank check forgers. After some thought, Frank accepted the offer and thus found himself on this side of the law. The cooperation between the special services and the former crook lasted for several months. Nothing is known about the results. Nothing strange since we're talking about classified information. But given the fact that there were no further claims against the guy, he did his job well. And then Frank decided to give up his criminal past and try to get a job. It seemed to him at the time that he would find work for himself, but due to his criminal record and his notoriety, all doors were closed to him. Most likely his career would have ended there, but this is Frank we're talking about. Our hero surprised everyone with his act here too. One morning, Frank, tired of getting rejected by his employers, went to the bank. There, the former swindler, hiding no facts of his biography, made the management a rather unconventional offer. The guy agreed to reveal the company the secrets of criminal activity in the sphere of bank swindling, and in return, he asked for a salary of $500 a week and a recommendation to other banks, as well as a private office in the central office building. As it happened, the fraudster of yesterday was now in high demand, and Frank's services were in such demand that he soon became an economic security consultant. Many years have passed since then, but Frank's name has been etched forever in history. Frank is now a millionaire and owns his own company, which advises the world's most famous corporations and banks. His fraud protection program is now used by over 14,000 companies. In addition, Frank lectures at the FBI Academy and helps track down fraudsters who have followed in his footsteps. But that's not all. In 2002, Steven Spielberg made a detective tragicomedy, Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. The film, based on Frank's biography, is still a big hit with audiences to this day. Few people know that the real Frank appeared in this film in a cameo role as a policeman. According to the script, he catches himself as a young man. Frank is now 72 and the father of 3 sons, one of whom works for the FBI. The man settled in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a woman whom he married a year after his release from prison. Abagnale also created the paper signature watermark, which is designed to make checks, passes, tickets, and other frequently counterfeited documents. The security features a 2-color watermark in the form of Abagnale's own signature, as well as the paper's multicolored fibers and chemical sensitivity, make it virtually indispensable. It is not readily available on the market, and a huge number of documents are produced with it. Of course, it must be said that our hero initially chose the wrong path in life, but everyone has the right to make mistakes, and the strong is not the one who does not fall down, but the one who finds the strength to get up. Frank finds himself and proves by his own example that it is never too late to change his life for the better. That's all for today. Write your opinion in the comments. How did the young guy manage to pull it all off? Also, rate the video if you like it, and talk to you soon. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.